Now return to our top story and reflect on Prime Minister Modi's five-nation visit. Joining me is Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat. Good evening and welcome, Ambassador Kumar. While India's relations with each of the five nations is unique and meaningful, when we look at the outcome of the visit as a whole, what stands out according to you?
Thank you very much for having me. I think it's an extremely important visit from three perspectives. The first is that some of the countries, no prime minister has gone for decades. Yes. And I'm even talking about countries like Brazil, where the last visit you will have to go back in time at least 5-6 decades to find out when the Prime Minister of India visited. So that was the first. And we are talking about Brazil, with which we have a strategic partnership and we are working closely together in the United Nations. Some other countries, no Prime Minister has ever gone. And I think Argentina, for example, you will again have to go back to the time of Indira Gandhi to know whether anybody went there or not. So that is the other important aspect I would like to highlight. The next one that I would like to talk about is that there is a certain sense in the world today that you need to strike a personal rapport with heads of state and heads of government. Not everything can be done at the level of foreign ministers or foreign secretaries. There is a certain summit diplomacy is what we diplomats call diplomacy at the highest level between heads of state and heads of government. That has become virtually irreplaceable. And therefore, there is a tremendous demand on the time of the Prime Minister of India to go to these places, because we just can't keep receiving all of them in India and not reciprocate those visits. So that's the other thing which has come into its own, summit level diplomacy. The last thing that I would like to say is that we need to really keep these ties and relationships going, because suddenly you have something like a Pahalgam terrorist attack in which we need the support of countries. I realized that when I went along with the parliamentary delegation to countries like Japan, Indonesia, South Korea, but those are countries which are closer to us, with which I think people have been going and coming. But countries like Ghana, for example, have tremendous clout in the African continent. And therefore, it was very important for somebody like the Prime Minister to go to Ghana and see what is happening there in terms of how India can actually try and build a relationship with Africa. I think the very last point I would like to make is also that if India has any desire to be the leader of the global South, and I think we are a natural candidate for being the leader of the global South, then countries like Ghana, Namibia, Brazil become super important, because these are countries of the global South, and it's extremely important that India tries to understand their perspectives on a whole range of international issues. You will recall that India wanted to ensure that African Union entered the G20 during its presidency. That has not been lost on any country in Africa, and therefore there is a certain catch-up, if you like, that India is also doing vis-a-vis other countries like China, which may have made some headway in Latin America and Africa. But I think India is a natural candidate to provide leadership, and that I also will say that India has tremendous acceptability and soft power among countries in Africa.
Right, sir. Staying with the point that you made about counter-terrorism in Brazil, Prime Minister flagged the issue of double standards on terrorism. We also see a BRICS joint statement condemning the attack in Kashmir. And the point that you were also part of that outreach mission after Operation Sindoor. How do you read the significance of this proactive and continuous engagement, as it were, with the international community on this issue?
No, you're quite right. You cannot do these relationships in fits and bouts. Call them once in 10 years, you go there once in 10 years. And I've noticed two things about the current Prime Minister, which a lot of others have noticed as well. First, we did not know what kind of a leader he will be in the domain of foreign policy. When he had come from Gujarat to take office as Prime Minister of India, it was not obvious to many of us as to whether he will take interest in foreign policy and what kind of a leader he will be. It is now beyond any doubt he has proved his mettle in terms of foreign policy. He has taken to it like a duck takes to water. Second thing that I have noticed about our Prime Minister is that he likes to make investment in personal relationships. And you cannot do that in just one trip. So you may be meeting them on the margins of the UN General Assembly, which is the natural place to meet leaders of Mali and Ghana and Namibia. But unless you go follow it up and go to their country, go make a speech in their parliament, the fact that you are receiving the highest honor of those countries, that makes a huge difference to the self-image, the self-respect, and their own prestige that they see in terms of receiving the Indian Prime Minister. Those things can't be done by meeting them on the margins of the UN General Assembly in New York. And that is why I think the Prime Minister's visit to countries like Namibia, countries like Ghana, and countries like Argentina will become very important.
Right, and particularly talking about India's Africa outreach, Prime Minister visited Ghana and then finally Namibia. In Ghana, Prime Minister called India a co-traveler of Ghana and its development journey. In Namibia, he highlighted that how Africa should not just be seen as a source of resources, of minerals. How does he then also distinguish the nature of India's development partnership when there's so many global powers competing for presence in the continent?
I think we have a natural advantage because we have been plugging for South-South cooperation with African countries for a long time. One of my earliest postings was Democratic Republic of Congo in the late 80s. And the two amazing symbols that you will see in Africa, at least those days, was a Tata truck, and then there was the Kirlosk water pump. This you would see in very arid areas, areas which are not connected well by roads, and yet these two were lifesavers. Now this is very different from other countries which would come in and build big football stadiums or big palaces and big parliamentary buildings. We may not do that, but the fact that we did these two and then we have done so many other things means that our cooperation is much more people-centric. The emphasis of India's development cooperation with Africa is to assess whether it will make a difference to people's lives. And that is why I think India has had tremendous success. But it's also a fact that we are seeking cooperation in critical minerals and rare earths. I don't think we need to be shy about it. It's a fact that we would, of course, not like to extract these minerals to the disadvantage of those countries in Africa. But I think we can legitimately say that, listen, we would like to pay a fair price and get those rare earths and minerals which we need for our development. The last thing that I would like to say is that India's development of digital public infrastructure will be of great interest to these countries. They are at a level of development where they would welcome cooperation with India, and they know that if something like this can work in India, which is a large country with different levels of development and 1.4 billion people, then it can work in Africa. So for a variety of reasons, I see a win-win situation in terms of development partnership between India and Africa.
And we also see the prospects of South-South cooperation peaking in the manner in which the expanded and assertive BRICS takes shape in the joint statement that it had come out with. Now, India all set to host it next year. How do you see the manner in which BRICS made its presence felt?
No, I think the BRICS, I have written about it as well. I think the BRICS summit declaration was a long one, it's true, and they have managed to pronounce themselves on every single conceivable issue facing the world. And I have argued that actually I find greater unity among the BRICS participants rather than the G7 summit, which took place in Alberta, Canada. And the BRICS is no longer just 5 countries. We are now 11 countries. And in spite of the fact that we have expanded, there was some talk before the BRICS summit that the expansion will not contribute to cohesion in terms of a joint statement. But I think the BRICS summit in Rio has surprised everybody by coming up with a joint declaration based on consensus, and they have been able to come up with some strong messaging in terms of tariffs, in terms of bombing of Iran, in terms of the Palestinian state, in terms of the situation in Gaza, in terms of UN reform, for example. The first time I think China and Russia have specifically said that they welcome a greater role for India and Brazil. So a lot of things in the BRICS declaration, and I think India takes over BRICS at a very critical time. The Prime Minister has already let it be known that he would like to reshape BRICS in terms of a development paradigm that countries of the South can use. So all in all, I would say what you say is absolutely right. A lot of South-South cooperation and a development paradigm that BRICS is now talking. And at a time when other fora like the G20, G7 are facing headwinds, I think it's very heartening to see that countries of the global South can get together within the platform of BRICS and pronounce themselves in a very unified voice. And that's the main takeaway from me.
On that note, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, many thanks for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective.